What if my swift defense to your feedback was not really either caused by my arrogance or by some deficiency in terms of my self esteem? What if there was a deeper neuroscience based reason, explanation for how we respond to feedback that it is imperative for us to understand if we want to improve the giving and the receiving of feedback? Hmm? Stick around for the next 30 minutes as we give a completely different and new insight into this vexed issue of the giving and the receiving of feedback. I'm Trevor E.S. Smith. I'm with the Success with People Academy, and I'll be your guide through the next few minutes. We really try to get out of here within 30 minutes or so. A lot of stuff to get through today, so maybe we go a little bit across the barrier. But this whole issue of embracing feedback is critical for our own development and for our growth. And so today we want to delve a little further into this issue. Now, we did actually write a newsletter, Success with People newsletter this week, that dealt with it from a different perspective. Today, we want to get deeper into some of the neuroscience behind the whole issue of getting feedback. And so please stick around. We looked at three, and we will just leave it to the same three barriers to embracing feedback. And so we want to see how the neuroscience looks at that. So the question that we have, the first barrier here, as you can see, is defensiveness. Why do we react defensively to feedback? People talk to us and they tell us, man, you're too sensitive, or, why you won't listen? And so there are a slew of things that are thrown back to us when we are on the receiving end of feedback. And many of us don't examine our provision of the feedback and the errors that we're making. But today we are talking about being on the receiving end. So what does the neuroscience say about this rush to defense when we are receiving feedback? That instinctive response really is a protection of ourselves. Yes, it's rooted, as it says here, in the brain's threat response system. Now let's look at a really fascinating examination of this subject. All right. So the brain's threat response. Yeah. When we receive feedback, sometimes it causes us to be concerned about the perception that we have of ourselves. Let me jump right in to say that we invest heavily in the sense of self, who we are and what it is that we represent. Yes. And so that self, that image that we have, we protect it, because otherwise things go to the very heart of who we are. Let me give you a specific case before we go a little further here. I gave feedback once, encouraging to me, and wonderful presentation to a direct report. Yes, to indicate the next steps on how the growth path would go. Very, to me, wonderful pathway of progress. The very next day, the individual came and resigned and indicated that the path that I laid out, she thought that she was beyond that. So her perception of herself wasn't aligned with the path that I outlined to her. And so the response was, this is not me. This is not aligned to me. This is a threat to who I understand myself to be. And so therefore I need to move out. So we understand the neuroscience behind this. That's the amygdala. That is the emotional center. This is your flight or fight or flight response mechanism. And so it is that feedback would be the equivalent of hearing, being in the jungle and hearing rustling in the bushes. You're saying, hey, that sounds like it could be tiger, lion, etc. I'm out of here. That is the equivalent. And so it's instinct. It's not a time to think, is it the breeze that's blowing the bushes or is it really? And so that's part of what it is. With that direct report, the question is, wow, if my manager has this opinion of me, then when will I ever get to the place that I think I'm already? I'm there already. So this path is going to take me too long. And obviously, the perception on his part is incorrect. So I might actually invest more time and still end up at a place that's not satisfactory for me. So that's the fight or flight. That's the idea. That's why we rush to defense, because we hear a rustling, the equivalent of a rustling in the bushes, and we are not taking any chances. The risk is too great out of here. That's why we put up the defense. That's why we put up the defense. So I hear you, but because if I don't say the but, what am I saying about myself? What am I saying about this image of myself that I have developed over all these years? So now the other part of the neuroscience, and this should have been our savior, is the prefrontal cortex. That's supposed to be the control center. This is where your rational thinking comes from. Yeah, the whole question of self-awareness. So that's where you make your decisions. Now, sometimes depending on the perceived level of the threat, the functioning of the prefrontal cortex is impaired, and it doesn't do the job of bringing rationality and saying, hey, stop, examine, is it the breeze or is it really a killer tiger in the weeds? And so it just allows you to go and let emotions take charge. And in that instance, then, our ability to process feedback objectively is really challenged. So again, it's not necessarily that the person has low self-esteem, so they're going to complain about everything that you say, or reject all your advice, or that they feel arrogant. So it's really here in the neuroscience, we can see that it's a protective mechanism. And depending on the perceived level of the threat, there is a response to fight, which is the pushback, the defense, or flight, which is maybe to resign, okay, or reject the feedback. Hope this is making some sense. So what do we do then with all of this nice neuroscience idea? Well, the first defense is mindfulness. Mindfulness. I'm gonna people talk about mindfulness a lot. Let's try to see if we can understand it a little bit better. Yes, we understand it's being in the moment. People talk about being present, being in the moment, etc. Well, essentially, the concept behind mindfulness is to get to a place where you don't let your thoughts run away with you. You sort of bring everything back to some kind of rational center. Yes. So that some more objective thinking can take place. Maybe critical thinking can be brought to bear on the situation. And my advice, and I'm going to give you some steps to do is to cultivate this practice of mindfulness, cultivate this self-regulation. This is basically what the mindfulness is about, so that we don't let the defensive mechanism overrun us. And so when we're getting feedback, we can actually approach it with an open mind. So the question would be that, but my understanding of mindfulness is a lot of stuff away from, go in a corner, do all of these kind of things. So, I'm here, I'm in this meeting, and I'm getting this feedback. How does mindfulness help me in this situation? Well, watch, right? So basically, in the feedback, you're just getting it, or you have just received it. Kind of stop a little bit, stop. So force yourself to recognize, yes, wow, this has hit me over my head. I really thought I was much further along my career path until my manager gave me my next steps, my career path. And I'm saying this is a blow to my ego, but I'm knocked over my head because, oh, this is not where I saw myself. So yeah, stop, accept that. This is not what I expected. It's not, So then the next thing that talks about here step is to ground yourself in the present moment. For me, the best one, did some training in, hypnotherapy and some other areas. And the breathing, the breath, that idea of controlling your breathing is one of the best ways to get grounded. What it is to inhale and watch that the breath coming into your body and exhale. The key one, the best one that I see is the following. I can't remember who it is, so I'm sorry. But it's to place your tongue at the top of your mouth, and you're going to count actually. So you're going to inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's a counting. And it can depend. I like the 4, 6, or you can do 6, 8. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah. So you can, depending on how you are in terms of the breath control, you might want to start with 4, 6. So it's in and then out. And while you're doing that, counting it, you're going to find that there is a calming effect. So that's one. That's just the third one is observe what's going on. So there's going to be a parade, and I want it to be a parade of thoughts. Don't stop the thoughts. Let's just let it pass by. Don't say, oh no, this. Don't stop any one of them. It's a parade. So they're just passing by your mind, and you just watch them. But also just remember, when I say remember, just watch the thoughts and just let them. Don't stop any one of them. So that's the other thing. So you can see what's happening, what's going on through your mind. And then compassion. To me, self-talk is critical. So the whole idea is to talk to yourself like you'll be talking to your friend. All right, okay. So my boss thought that I was way back in first grade, and I am in fifth grade. This is disappointing, honestly, because you have put out all of this work, you've done all of that, and to be in that position is not healthy. But guess what? That doesn't have to define you. So that's the kind talk that you have, and speak it out. As a matter of fact, in some instances, people say write it, journalize it. All right, and so then, as you go forward now, we're going to work on this whole idea of not being reactive, like a knee jerk. Every time you get feedback, you want to work on it and to understand the value of being able to process information without immediately rejecting it. I am sometimes allowed to be the master of ceremonies for some weddings or to give advice. And my thing to the newlyweds is to learn the concept of sifting. The idea. You're going to get a lot when you get just married. People from all walks are going to give you a lot of advice. What you need to do is to have a sieve, and you can actually put the advice in there, shake it, let the things that are not useful fall apart and fall through, and then you take whatever is of value and apply it to your life. And that's what we should do with feedback. Don't just let it come into your sieve. let it come into yourself and say, okay, I will sort it out afterwards, but let me hear it. Let me understand. Let me just get clarity as to what it is that you're saying, what is the feedback, and then afterwards, I will go and do my sifting. That's a key, so that you're not just then throwing away good stuff or internalizing stuff that's not healthy for you. Right? And so that then feeds into this self-reflection. What is it that you can learn from it? How much of the information is valid? How much of it is not? What do I do about it? And then also there is this whole issue then that maybe it could be that you can't manage it by yourself, in which case you need to actually go and talk to your family, talk to friends or a colleague, and to say, hey, this is what happened today at work. Can you believe it? And then what do I do about it? And so maybe my, direct report went home and people said, no, forget it, because I know that she actually went and studied, changed her career completely. So remember now that this mindfulness thing that we're talking about is not necessarily something that is, you have to wait and can be done in the context of feedback. You can be present in the moment. You can use some of these, even though you're stunned, you feel stunned and overwhelmed. Right? So use mindfulness to get greater clarity. Remember the self-talk, right? So that you can start to be empowered. This is going somewhere for you. Let's move forward. So the second strategy to manage our rush to defense, fight or flight, fight is the defense, right? And it's cognitive restructuring, or cognitive, some people call it cognitive reframing. And so it is really looking at this rush to automatically have negative thoughts. Whoa, I'm getting feedback. Are they going to fire me? Does this mean I'm not going to get promoted? Stop that rush to negative thinking using cognitive restructuring or reframing. And so where this goes is that you have to examine your assumptions. How are you interpreting this feedback? What are you drawing from the feedback? Is it valid? Should you be reframing it? Right? And so the whole thing is we can then start to learn and improve on the basis of our feedback, as again, seeing it as a negative, as a personal attack, or that we are at risk, we're in danger. Yeah, we're about to be consumed by a tiger, as against the fact that, wow, today it's windy. Okay, so how does this cognitive restructuring process work? Very quickly, again, given our time frame, is that first of all, we need to identify the negative thoughts. You remember that parade we spoke about? That we are just going to allow the thoughts to pass through, just come across, watch them, don't stop any one of them. That's the first step, is to reflect on those. What am I thinking? Am I thinking, well, maybe I'm at risk? Maybe this is a warning that I'm going to be fired? Does this mean that the expectation that I have about a race of taste, or what are the thoughts that are passing through, right? And in many instances, this is where the first step of the reframing process goes, is to look at the extent to which we are using generalizations. He always has negative things to say to me. He never has a word of encouragement. Is that really true? Is that really true? And that's how he is, that's why people don't like him. He just tears down everybody. Yeah. Watch that. The personalization. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like me. How long he has been out for me. So that is it. Me is a personal attack. And the magnifying of the issue. There's a fancy word that they use, but I can't pronounce it, so I just leave it alone. It is catastrophizing or something. What it is saying is that worse, this is, you always go to the worst. This is impossible. This is, all right? So every time you get feedback, you think of the worst case. Well, to carry to the extreme. Then the next piece of the reframing is to question the evidence, is to say to yourself, is it really true? Yes? No? Am I really indecisive? Is there a basis on which I could be deemed to be indecisive? What are some of the decisions that I've been asked to make in the recent past? Have I delayed on them, or have I been ready to make decisions within a reasonable time frame? So we'll examine. And if it is true, then remember the sieve, we're going to keep that. If it is not true, we're going to let it fall through and leave it alone. So one of the things that we have to do, though, is to challenge our negative thoughts to see whether they are accurate or not. Because the problem with it is that if we are going to reframe and get to a better place in receiving feedback, we have to throw out some of the tendencies that we have. So this feedback, we perceive it to be negative because this individual only gives us bad things. Is this really true? What about last week when he shared how excellent our presentation was? What about the month before when this, we need to challenge it so that when the tendency comes up now to say, hey, here is another case, we can say, no, it's not true. Get out of that habit of jumping to these conclusions. So that's the part of questioning our evidence on the basis of what are we drawing from this. It also helps us with the stress, because if we can examine it, we can see that this is not really where we are. So what about the alternative perspectives? Yeah. We can look at it to say, what if we thought about this in another way? What if my manager really saw a pathway, a highly successful career pathway for me, and from his perspective, given where we are, he thought that this would have been useful for me, and that it is not anything negative. He is not look out for me, and he just really had a genuine understanding of how things could work out for me. What if we were to start to think about things in that kind of light? And so that would also then help us to sort of be more balanced in our thought processes. Yeah. So we start to look at a rational approach to things as against the knee-jerk. Right? So look for evidence that looks at the constructive. Yeah? What is the basis on which he was outlining this career path for me? He has to operate within the context of the business. What is it that would have driven him to see this? So maybe the problem is that I'm not a fit for this business. But in fairness to him, he gave me a path that would be best for me within the context of the business. That's the kind of rationalization, as against then going to label the provider of the feedback as being misguided and of being out for you personally, etc. Right? And we talked about this whole question of the self-doubt, that the feedback is not anti-you. You need to make sure that you hold on to who you are. Yes. Don't let the feedback start to shake your confidence into yourself. Reaffirm how good you are at what it is that you do. Reaffirm your values so that you're not shaken. Yeah? And the other thing now is start then now the next time you get feedback, or even role play with yourself to say, what if somebody were to give me this kind of feedback? Performance appraisals coming up. What if this were the case? How would I respond? And start to practice that. Right? That's part of the process. Right? And persistent practice, persistent good practice is going to lead you out of your defensiveness. Hope this is helping. That definitely not going to finish with the time. But let me just put a disclaimer. By the way, I'm not, certified psychologist or anything, so I'm not getting into any cognitive behavioral therapy here. But I just wanted to let you know that some of those techniques can work, but you can actually use them. But if you are at a position where you're really bothered by these negative, persistent defensiveness, and emotional challenges, then maybe you should seek help from a mental health practitioner. Not providing that advice here at all. All right. And so the other one is the whole question of the plasticity of the brain. So you could actually physically rewrite your brain by doing some of the things that we talked about. This is really more encouragement than another strategy, which is to say to you, if you practice these things, you can actually create neural pathways where at some point in time, you will be able to go into receive feedback without the outer push for negativeness, the fight or the flight, right? So incorporating these insights will help us look at things from a different perspective so that we're not as defensive and we can work at that. And so practice the mindfulness, go through the cognitive restructuring or reframing, if you want to call it, leverage the brain's neuroplasticity, and you can find yourself receiving feedback in a much more open-minded way. But there are two other barriers which I'm just going to move over quickly. One of them is the lack of trust. That we're saying, I don't trust you. I'm not comfortable with your motives for giving me this feedback. Those kinds of things build a huge barrier in terms of your ability to receive feedback, especially from given providers. So trust then is critical to the giving and receiving of feedback. And I know trust then, right? Thank you, Kerry. Let me just quickly say that this is a very important and interesting discussion. I will share recent experience with feedback. For years, I've been struggling to keep my glucose levels within range recommended by my doctor. Recently, I bought and started using the Freestyle Libre monitor that provides continuous monitoring to my phone. In a few weeks, I have gained better control of my levels, better than all those meds I prescribed over the years. A little, no, it's not off the topic. It's good in the sense that you were ignoring the feedback, and now here it is. Great. All right. So we can move that out of the way. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's the whole idea, is that sometimes we just don't follow the advice that we're given. We put up barriers, and then afterwards we realize it. But this trust, and I suppose at some point in time, Kerry, is that he improved his trust relationship with his doctor. And you say, hey, this guy went and studied, or this lady went and studied for all of these years. They must know something. Let me take some of the advice. And that's where it is, that we need to get to a place now where we create a trust environment. But we can't do it. It's not unilateral. So what we can do then is assume that your colleagues are trustworthy. It's a risk you have to take. And so what that means is that you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. It might be a tiny, minuscule benefit of doubt. I mean, really and truly, everything seems clear, but give them the benefit of the doubt. Believe that this person has your best interest at heart. And then listen at least to put whatever they are saying in the sieve. Right? And so what that would help you to do then is to say, okay, so Trevor, what are you saying to me? Give me some idea as to if I were just coming to the job, what would be the pathway? What's the difference between me and a newcomer? What is the difference between me with my qualifications and somebody with how does this path relate to my experience, what I've demonstrated that I can do in the past? That's it. So there's a discussion. So maybe even in that discussion, it might occur to both of us that, hey, maybe your dream, your vision, your aspirations cannot be contained within this company. Sad story. So I wouldn't be shocked the next day when I got the resignation. But that's what I'm saying. You can at least discuss it from a perspective that the person has my best interest at heart. So ask, because it might be so far out that this concept, this feedback is so far away from how I see myself. I need to ask some questions. I need to ask some questions about it. Yes. So again, I'm going to run over the time. Unfortunately, if you have to go, I'm sorry, but there's some meat that I need to give, and maybe you can come back and get the replay. Yeah, definitely you will get it anyway. So here's this. We did a 360. All right. Just maybe I said it the last meeting, no matter. I did a 360, and there was some really bad feedback for the CEO. Bad. He engaged me to go to the persons, the peers and the direct reports who gave the feedback, and to find out from them, just one-on-one, what is it that why you gave this kind of feedback. And one of the feedback, I don't think that anybody would know who it is, so I can't say. One of the feedback was alcohol abuse, which impacted judgment. The perception is right. So that information was presented back, and the penny dropped. The penny dropped. That, whoa, I need to manage that. So what I'm saying is, if you had just rejected it and said, bitter people, these people, I don't know what they want of me, no. If you question it from a perspective that this could be well-meaning, this could be in my interest, then you can probably learn more. So I would suggest that with the lack of trust is that you move, you ask the questions about it, you assume that the persons have your best interest at heart. Might be a silly thing to do, but that's how it is. The other one is the timing. I know, teachable moment. All of us have, the teacher, to look for that teachable moment, and that's when you need to give the advice. Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes the people that are providing the advice miss the moment. But right now, this is not the time. I don't want any advice. I don't want to hear it. This happens with my wife several times. I want to say something, and she says, no, this is not a teachable moment. I don't want to hear what to do. Just want commiseration, or I just want space. Understand some of that. So that's something that you have to deal with. But again, we're looking at the receiver, and we are saying from a receiving point of view, understand that the individual might believe that this is timely to give you this advice. Don't bother beat them over their heads, because they have learned the idea of a teachable moment, and they thought that giving you the advice in this moment was the best thing. But forgive them. Okay, what about the other part now, the approach though? Remember, we're not controlling the provider. We have to deal with what it is. So my thing would be to use our discerning model of communication, because a lot of the provision of advice completely speaks a different behavioral language to the language that the person uses. So it's like giving me coaching in Swahili when I only speak English. And that's what happens. And so, I'm getting a little bit more upset as to why are you raising your voice in the Swahili? I'm not understanding how you are saying, why is this person so stubborn? Why is he not doing it? And that's what is happening to you. So some of the persons, for example, are using dominance, which they understand is that direct, get to the point. Tell Trevor exactly what it is that you need done. You don't have any problem. You're not upset with him. You're just saying, this needs to happen, bam, bam, bam. It might be on the other side that somebody says, he's so insensitive. He coach it, in politically correct language. The other side might be you are coming, you're doing have the sandwich thing where nice words, and then you put your meat in, nice words, going around it, trying to, create a nice environment. And the person is saying, get to the point. Why are we going around all of these circles? Get to the point. So what I'm just saying to you is that if we understand the framework, the communication model, the discerning communication model, we can actually speak to individuals behaviorally in the language that they're comfortable with. So you can actually stand in their shoes when you're giving them the feedback in a way that they want it. That's all I'm saying. And if you know, remember we're talking the reception side, the receiver. As the receiver, you have to forgive again. You have to understand that maybe Don has not identified that I don't want that directive. I want to get my medicine, with syrup in it or honey in it. I don't want the direct. Yes. You might have someone else who says, if you're giving me feedback, I need the evidence. Give me case by case evidence as to why are you giving me that feedback. If you're not doing that, then I'm sorry, I have to put up my bar. So one of the things that you have to do now on the receiving end is to learn that some individuals are not as informed as you are. So you might get feedback in ways that you don't want it. My suggestion would be for you to coach the providers of the feedback that says, next time, I would prefer if you did it in this way or that way. That way, together you can enhance the receptiveness, right? And develop a transformative environment. All right, so let's try and get out of here as quickly now. So if we look at the three reasons, three main barriers, we can actually look at using neuroscience, using mindfulness, using cognitive restructuring or reframing, and using the discerning model of communication and leadership to get to a place where we can draw more from the feedback that we're getting. Yes, we still want to sieve, but at least we're in a better position to do so. So I would suggest that we work at it so that the knee-jerk, and by the way, it's not, so we're not just terrible persons. This is part of the neuroscience that says us that this knee-jerk is natural. It's based on the whole question of how we are created and made, how we survive in the jungle now, so that there is this fight or flight. So that's something that we need to understand, that it's deeper than just arrogance or low self-esteem. Right? And so we're suggesting then that we apply these techniques in order to open the door to receiving feedback. All right. So here's our request. If you got any value at all from this feedback, from this live cast, well, I'm going to suggest 3 actions that you can do. One of them is apply it. There is the neuroscience suggests like 60 odd days, but I just said 3 months, 90 days. Work on applying these concepts intentionally, day by day, over the next 90 days, and see the transformation. You're going to develop new neural pathways, etc. And be helpful to me. Leave some encouraging remarks in the chat afterwards. If you see it's going to be all over the LinkedIn, you can actually just share in the chat if you got something valuable from it, and send a link to some colleagues. But here's the other thing you could actually do. I'd be happy to talk to your leadership team about feedback in your organization, because most organizations have a problem with feedback, and feedback is essential in terms of driving engagement, performance, and overall development of the enterprise. So it's just a talk, get online and we discuss some of the issues related to feedback that will be helpful to your leadership team. So send me an email, info@successwithpeople.org, or you can just pop me a WhatsApp, 876-535-6677. Who are we? The Success with People Academy is actually a SHRM recertification provider, which means that we can provide credits, professional development credits for SHRM CP or SHRM SCP recertification. Basically suggests that we operate at a level that is recognized internationally. It's a part of the InfoServe group, and we deploy the discerning mode of communication on the platform of Extended Disk on the Revolutionary Things platform. And we use that to enhance performance of individuals and their teams and the organizations. Let's have a conversation. That's it. Thank you for your time.